This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. I'm glad you're with us today. We are joined by Kristen Olson. She's a member of the California State Assembly. And Assemblywoman, I recently read that on the last day to submit bills, the following numbers were submitted. In the Assembly, 1,376. In the Senate, 813, for a total of 2,189. And that was a low year. That was a low year. That was pretty surprising. Now, I don't know anything about these bills, but what do you think about 2,189 bills being submitted?
Well, I'll tell you, I'd be hard-pressed to find anyone throughout California that thinks we need 2,000 new laws on the books.
One could argue.
You know, so it'll be a busy year, no doubt. Are there challenges and problems we need to address in California? Absolutely. Are there 2,000 new laws we need? Absolutely not.
Yes. Now, the challenge, though, is these laws were submitted on the, quote, last day, so arguably you can review them.
Absolutely.
At your leisure. But what happens often, and especially at the end of the budget cycle, with this constitutional deadline being June 15th or 30th? 15th. A bill will pop up with literally hours to go, and neither Democrat nor Republican members will have a chance to review those bills. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, this is something that's been a grave concern of mine for a while now. Last year I introduced the Legislative Transparency Act, which in part sought to make sure we had an opportunity to thoroughly review bills before voting on them. This year I've done the same thing again. It says that all bills need to be in print for at least 3 days before they can be voted on. It's really important because in America, we're a republic, we're a democracy. We should be encouraging civic engagement. And I believe the public deserves the opportunity to comment on what we're going to be voting on before we take action.
I have spoken with one of your colleagues, Brian Nestandi, before about this very issue. He has brought a bill like this up for the past several years, and as I understand it, this bill, or a version thereof, has not made it out of committee.
That is correct. Last year, and he and I have been trying this for a number of years now. Last year, I did reach a policy committee for a hearing, which, believe it or not,
got to committee.
Was progress.
Right, okay.
So that was a good thing, but it did fail. The good news is this year, I have reintroduced it, and it's now a bipartisan effort.
Really?
We have 3 Democrats in the Senate, Senator Lois Wolk, Lou Correa, Mark DeSaulnier, who have joined on in this effort. Senator Wolk and I have each introduced our separate bills. I have ACA 4, she has SCA 10, so that they can run parallel tracks.
That's huge.
It's huge.
I mean,
it's a huge step forward.
With supermajorities
Absolutely.
on the Democratic side.
And if you think about it, it's really not an ideological partisan issue.
One could argue.
Legislators should have the opportunity to know what we're voting on before we vote.
But what's remarkable about any legislative body, despite the fact that Democrats may be in charge or Republicans may be in charge, is leadership can be very powerful.
Yes.
And if leadership doesn't want the bill to see the light of day, it won't see the light of day. That's the way it is. This is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. It is the way it is. So even though Senator Wolk, a Democrat, may support this bill, how do you get it to advance when leadership can just put the kibosh on it?
Great question. It's going to take a lot of hard work. There's no doubt we still have an uphill battle ahead of us, but it takes legislators rolling up their sleeves and working really hard. Our constituents sent us here to do the hard work, not just the easy work. And so we're going to be meeting with members one-on-one, building coalitions, trying to build a broad base of support in hopes that we can advance through the committee process.
Do you have any co-sponsors on the Democratic side in the Assembly yet?
Not in the Assembly yet. We have just begun those meetings. It'll be at least 30 days before we go to a policy committee. Common Cause, however, is sponsoring the bill.
That helps.
Yes.
And not a conservative organization.
Correct. They're known as a bipartisan, nonpartisan organization.
When we come back, can we talk more about this?
Would love to.
We're speaking with Kristen Olson, a member of the California State Assembly. For our viewers on HLN, thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, Assemblywoman Olson, I want to talk more about this notion of Democrats supporting a bill like this, because as we discussed, you need Democratic support with supermajorities in both in the Assembly and the Senate. You got the Senate side. Tell me about these meetings you'll have with Democratic colleagues on the Assembly side.
You know, it's going to have to be about building relationships and encouraging us to do the right thing for Californians. At the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. It's just common sense to say a bill should be in print. We as legislators should have the opportunity to know what we're voting on at least 3 days in advance.
So,
common practice has sometimes been 15 minutes.
Right. No, I know that to be true. I mean, this is not a lie. We've heard these reports. At the same time, are there exemptions, exceptions in emergency? Because sometimes you just don't know. You may need to get this done very, very quickly.
Yes, the bill does say that if the governor needs to declare a state of emergency, that the rule could be waived and we could pass emergency legislation. And that's really important. I mean, think about if we had a Hurricane Katrina or Storm Sandy type situation. We have provided for those provisions. This is going to be a hard one, though.
So speaking of the governor has to sign all legislation in California, subject to veto, but be that as it may. Have you reached out to the governor's staff? I mean, I could envision the governor supporting something like this. He is kind of a no-nonsense, transparent type of guy.
I agree, and he has shown some level of commitment to reform. You know, we desperately need dramatic changes in California to the process and to policies in order to experience economic vitality and opportunity again. So we're hopeful he'll be a partner in this. Right now, we're just focused on the first policy committee. And I'll tell you, what we need in California are courageous leaders. It's hard to be a courageous leader. It's hard to step out and take a vote that maybe one's leadership doesn't want them to do. But that's what Californians expect of us.
Do you know what your leadership thinks of this bill, meaning Connie Conway, Bob Huff?
Our leadership is very much in favor. In fact, Bob Huff is a co-author of the bill, who's the Senate Republican leader. So we're all on board, and I'm hopeful that we'll get most Democrats to come on board eventually.
I want to talk to you about another issue relating to transparency, and that's known as the Brown Act. That is an act that applies to local government, city councils, boards of supervisors. You have been on a city council before. I was recently speaking with a Board of Supervisor member in San Bernardino County, and she was lamenting that on a board her size, there are 5 members. She is not allowed to speak with more than 2 members about an issue because that could violate the Brown Act, which requires all meetings be public. I get it. You want transparency, but I've said this on the air. How do you collaborate if you can't talk with more than one other person on your body?
A lot of that varies from city to city.
Sure.
In my experience on the Modesto City Council, it worked just fine because we had a committee process.
Okay.
So we had the opportunity to really vet bills, to hear support and opposition arguments in committees before it went to the full council, which were open, subject to the Brown Act, but gave us an opportunity to dialogue before voting.
But you also had a council of 7.
Yes.
So arguably, if you could talk to 3 people, it's not 4.
That is true.
Right.
And it can be tricky, but I believe it can be done. And I believe ultimately Californians deserve an open, transparent, accountable government.
Have you heard rumblings about this issue? I can't imagine I'm the first one. I mean, I am the smartest guy around, but I can't believe I'm the first person to have talked to you about the frustrations that are brought upon by the Brown Act.
Some, and you know, it's a balance. We have to make sure that acts are working, right? And so there were some bills, even in the legislature last year, to make sure that city councils could operate in cases of emergency or important negotiations they're working on. So sometimes things need to be fixed so that the balance is appropriate and things can be done in closed session. But I always think we should err on the side of openness and transparency.
And there's also frustration because, as I understand it, the Brown Act does not apply to the legislature.
That's the very frustration. You know, we love, as a legislative body, to pass bills that apply to everybody except for us. And I think it's appropriate to say if we're going to require local governments, whether that's school boards, cities, counties, to abide by openness and transparency, we should expect the same of ourselves.
So do you expect to see reform on that front? I mean, I haven't heard a lot about that.
Right.
So I mean, one step at a time.
The Legislative Transparency Act will be the first step. And I think it's a really good, important step. There's no doubt we need serious reforms in California. From a process standpoint, from a policy standpoint, we were the golden state, the place that everybody in our nation wanted to come to. I believe we can be again, but it's going to take serious reforms and hard work.
Her name is Kristen Olson. She's a member of the California State Assembly. When we come back, we'll speak with one of her colleagues, Dan Logue. He's looking at reform in education. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We'll be right back on California Edition. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We're now joined by Dan Logue. He's a member of the California State Assembly. And sir, I recall in the 1980s, those students who attended UC, CSU, they were paying under $1,000 a year. Yet in the past year, UC's over $12,000, CSU about $6,000. It's been very difficult for families.
It has. And the key issue here is when I was going to college, there was no internet. It was in the 70s. It was like $500 a year. Right. Now we have students that student debt on tuition alone is $1 trillion, which could literally sink our economy. What I've done is I've come up with a formula to get students into the field of science, technology, engineering, and math at the cost of tuition for $10,000, and it's a tremendous formula.
And let's talk about it, because you have two different bills that are marching through the legislature. One deals with the CSU, one deals with the UC system, similar bills. And you're looking at developing a baccalaureate degree pilot program. It's kind of that back program that we hear about. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's interesting. We have 4 or 5 colleges already interested in working on a working group to do this. You have the operative word, pilot program.
Right.
The key is last year we brought in 270,000 students to fill jobs in America from overseas in the field. That's starting at 70,000 a year. They expanded that another 70,000 this year. There's a bill out to do that. So the bottom line is that we should be creating our own citizens here at home in order to fill these jobs. Bill Bennett just did a study on it and said it's
former education secretary.
Yeah, and it's costing us $1 trillion to basically bring in students from overseas to fill these jobs.
Literally. I mean, we literally have to import engineers, computer scientists. And the flip side is we also are exporting many of these graduates from our homegrown universities because they can't get visas to stay in the country. So it's really a lose-lose proposition.
We're educating them, and they're going overseas, and the ones that are not staying here, we can't fill the needs for it. And it's huge. And the bottom line, it's not a Walmart certificate or a BA degree. This is very intense. When you're in Germany, they start students off in the freshman year of high school on what their careers will be. We don't do that.
Right.
So what we're allowing for is 30 credits, units of college credits in high school in the field of science, technology, engineering, or math.
And that will be done through advanced placement courses?
Or college credited courses.
Or community college as well?
Yes. And then after that, 30 units in junior college. So they end up being in 3 years in college instead of 4.
Right.
Or 6. The average now is 5 years.
I know.
Instead of $60,000 in student loans, they're out in the 4th year getting a $70,000 a year job.
Let me ask you about the AP situation, because as you know, the governor is proposing a formula shift that would provide more funding to school districts serving more challenged students, be it English language learners, be it less economically advantaged. That could be to the detriment of wealthier districts, which often have students that are looking towards advanced placement courses. Are you concerned that that formula could impact your pilot programs?
Not at all, because we believe that this is absolutely a great opportunity for low-income students to be able to get an affordable degree for $10,000, and middle-class students who don't have the financial backup by the state to get them into these programs.
Well, what do we do about the fact that we may not have funding to even have the AP courses?
Well, you can have you may not have the AP courses, but you can have college accredited courses, and there is a difference.
I see.
And so the AP courses cost actually $100 per course. The college accredited courses won't cost that much.
And is that through high schools or through community colleges?
Through high schools.
Okay, when we come back, sir, I want to talk more about this program. I want to get a sense as to the support you're getting. I understand you're getting calls from the national news media, not just Brad Pomerantz. We are speaking with Dan Logue. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. Now, Assemblyman, I understand that your bills for UC-CSU back pilot programs getting national heat?
Yeah, it's interesting. Time Magazine called us about a story on it. New York Times had done a story on it. Magazines, Fox News, Business News had done a story on it also. But most important is we're getting a lot of cover from the colleges and the college newspapers and the editorial boards. Even the Sacramento Bee came out in support of it.
So the fact of the matter is that we're in a partisan environment.
Yes.
You are a member of the Republican Party
Yes.
in a legislature dominated by Democrats.
Yes.
Have you spoken with your colleagues on the Democratic side about this?
Yeah, they're very interested in it. They're taking a hard look at it. I believe that we'll be able to get out of committee. We're going to have some tremendous testimony by university presidents and junior college chancellors and high school students.
At the same time, obviously, in order for this bill to be successful, should it pass, is you need access to community colleges.
Yes.
And you may not have been a supporter of Prop 30, but Prop 30 does give additional funding for community colleges, for the UC-CSU system. And so are you feeling that with the passage of Prop 30, there will be the courses available?
Well, yeah, I believe the courses will be available because there's such a demand. You know, we're reaching out to Microsoft. We're reaching out to Hewlett-Packard, companies in the Silicon Valley that are desperately needing to hire these students.
Right, but I guess my point is that we know that during the last 5 years, there were students that were having to go to 2 and 3 community colleges just to get the classes because sections were being shut down.
That's a good point.
And so with the passage of Prop 30, despite your opposition, are we in a state that this program can be successful because there are enough sections?
This program could have been successful before Prop 30 or after Prop 30 because it gives priority admission to these students who are developed in STEM. They start in high school as freshmen and they get their 30 units, and once they achieve that goal, they're able to get priority enrollment in those specialized classes. It's designed to make sure that after 4 years of engaging, that once they get into a university, that they basically have the highest priority as far as admissions.
Now, I think it's very in vogue to be supportive of STEM education. It's undeniable.
But nobody's doing it.
Arguably.
Yeah.
But what about the other students? That may not be pursuing STEM degrees.
Well, like I said before, the big demand right now is in hiring students in STEM. But if this works, if we use this as a pilot program, and that's why, like you mentioned earlier, the pilot program is the key. If we're successful, we can broaden this into internet classes, by the way, like they're doing in San Jose State. We met with the president. He's interested in doing this and implementing internet classes at the same time. So we could do this. We can broaden this. Look, in 100 years, the educational process hasn't changed, but technology is changing. We need to take advantage of it, and the costs are going through the ceiling.
I want to ask you about online education because we know the governor, in his proposed budget for this upcoming fiscal year, has made it very clear that he expects online education be a bigger component of higher education.
Absolutely.
On the one hand, I get that, but maybe I'm just too old and I like that one-on-one interaction.
Yes.
What's your feeling about this whole online education? And I talked to you specifically because you were the big proponent of telehealth, which is online medicine, so convince me.
Well, I think that it has the opportunity to allow students who can't afford to go to college to have that opportunity. Like San Jose State, you don't have to go to San Jose State to get that online course, but if you pass it and the standards are set high enough and you go to San Jose State, those courses will be accredited to you. So we're not looking at every class being online, but there's a lot of classes that aren't being taught because it's not affordable. Right. Think of the vocational education that we can implement right now, where we have students graduating from colleges and they can't get a job. But if they were able to get courses that were vocational driven and is online, we could afford to do this, and these kids could step up to the plate and be employed right out of college.
So as part of the back degree pilot program, is there an online element to it? Will those college courses you discussed, be it at the high school level, be it at the community college level, will those apply?
We're looking at that with San Jose State as part of our pilot program to see how we can implement this into the program. Good example, they have, it's $150 for their math courses at San Jose State online. Normally it's like $270 per unit. So that's a savings almost of 2/3. Because he can sign up 2,000 students,
of course, literally,
and pay for the class. And I think you were talking earlier, which was a good point, that we need to make the classes available. Right. That's the way to do it.
Okay, his name is Dan Logue. He's a member of the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerantz. This is California Edition. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Our guest, Steve Knight, member of the California State Senate, which is a new job for you. You had spent how many years in the Assembly?
4 years.
So please give me a sense of the difference. How is it between the Assembly and the Senate?
A little difference. I mean, this is only February, so we haven't gone into our committee hearings too much. We've had just a couple informational hearings, and now we're starting to get into the committee. So you're seeing it, but it is a little bit more maybe collegial.
Is it?
Yeah, because people traditionally have come up through the Assembly, learned everything that they should through there, and now they're in the Senate. So.
But what about the fact that this year, for better or for worse, you would say worse, I'm sure, there are only 11 Republicans out of 40. I mean, this was not a great year for the Republican Party on the Senate side, or the Assembly side, but especially the Senate side.
Wasn't a stellar year.
Right.
Yeah. I was the only freshman elected senator for Republicans. Now, Jim Nielsen just got in a special.
Right.
I don't think I can count Jim as a freshman since he has served in both houses a couple times. But yeah, it was a difficult year for the Republicans.
But I have to think now more than ever is a time for the Republicans to work with Democrats. I mean, supermajorities eventually once the special elections are over. Are you ready to do that? I mean, you have a package of bills I want to speak with you about. Are you ready to take those steps?
Oh, absolutely, always. I think many people have said, well, you're not going to get anything done. I said, well, that's not why I'm up here.
Exactly.
If I write a bill, I expect that people will engage it, not that it's a Republican bill and I'm writing it from a Republican standpoint and you guys are going to hate it.
Right.
I want it to be engaged.
So are you getting that type of feedback from your Democratic colleagues? I mean, are they willing to speak with you, listen to you? You know, the Speaker of the Assembly and the Pro Tem have both said that they don't intend to, quote, abuse their supermajority status. They understand they're here to do a job, but they can say one thing and do another.
Well, the proof's in the pudding, I guess.
Sure.
But
It's early.
The Pro Tem has been very vocal with me. He's been put out that branch, and so I take him at his word. I think that there's going to be a lot of give and take. And you've got to remember, if you've got all the power and you don't want anybody else to vote for it, then you've got to own everything.
Right.
And so
be careful what you wish
yeah,
for.
There's some pressure there.
Now, I want to speak with you about several bills that you have dropped recently. You call them your aerospace package. We just spoke with Assemblyman Dan Logue about his push to create a back program for STEM students. Mm-hmm. You have a bill that's focused upon a income tax credit for teachers focused on STEM education. Tell me about that.
Well, we have a couple different ideas for STEM. The science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degrees are, well, it's difficult to get those degrees.
Yeah, but we know that. As an international relations major, continue.
But it's also difficult to keep those kids here. There's jobs all over the world, and we'd like our California kids who are getting our education through our UCs and CSUs to have an opportunity to get a job here. That's what a couple of these bills address. And we want our teachers to be engaged in STEM technology. This is the wave of the future. We understand that. And we want our children to have the best opportunity. That means having our teachers engaged, having them teach the top cutting edge techniques, and being able to produce that product, which is a great kid at the end of that four-year degree.
Your package has 5 bills. 2 of them focus on STEM, the income tax credit for teachers, as well as a new employer provision that's part of your package. When we come back, sir, I want to speak more about these bills and 3 others that you are pushing through the Senate. Our guest is Steve Knight. He's a member of the California State Senate. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, Senator Knight, I want to speak with you more about those 2 bills focused on STEM. Talk to us about first the income tax credit for teachers, if you can.
Well, mostly we want our teachers to be engaged in STEM technology, and we want them to have not an incentive, but a little help in that regard. We are seeing the statistics on STEM technology degrees. They're not good right now. especially with a lot of our young ladies that are not getting attracted into the engineering and mathematics degrees.
Right.
And we want that to happen.
So do you have a sense that this bill could survive? And the only reason I ask you that is, in my prior life, I was a lawyer, which is very dangerous. And I'm just concerned that a bill like that, you're treating some teachers differently than others. And so is there an equal protection question that could pop up?
Well, I guess there is. There always is in when you're giving an incentive for something to be attracted. But I think that everyone is engaged that this is the wave of the future. This is the high-paying technical jobs that our kids are going to be competing for. Not just getting, but competing. We have billions of kids coming from Asia and Europe that want American jobs.
And what's frustrating, and I spoke with Assemblyman Logue about it, is so often we will educate foreign nationals and then we will make them leave because they can't get visas.
Right.
That's being handled back in Washington. But do tell me more about another one of your bills, which focuses on a new hire and tuition credit for employers of recent engineer graduates.
Well, absolutely. Again, we're talking about the STEM technology degrees, and we're talking about advancing those degrees. In my area, I have the big three in the aerospace
and this
industry.
is the Lancaster area.
In the high desert, Lancaster, Palmdale area, I have Boeing, Northrop, and Lockheed there, which are the big three. We don't build many airplanes in California right now, only one, the C-17 down in Long Beach. And so we're getting into that area where we're doing a lot of research and development, we're doing a lot of advancements, and we need the advanced degrees, and we need these folks that are working in these situations to be able to move forward, get an advanced degree, and get a little bit of help.
You mentioned research and development. That's one of your bills as well. You're focusing on an R&D credit for manufacturing specific to aerospace. California, for better or for worse, is known for having strong R&D credit programs. So why don't you talk to us about that?
Well, unless we can attract manufacturing to the state, we are destined to have difficulties in the future. Our middle class, those people that are going to make between $40,000 and $85,000 a year, those manufacturing jobs have to be there for your state to be sustainable. And we know that. We have renewable energies out there. We have all the mirrors and the windmills and all of that. And they come out to my district and put them in the ground. And that's great. We love those jobs. But we'd love to have the jobs where we're manufacturing the mirrors or the blades. And so that is the same aspect. And that came right from the industry.
That's simple.
Is that R&D tax credits have to be there.
You mentioned that in your district you have Boeing, Lockheed,
And Northrop.
When I hear those names, I get a little nervous because as we speak today, we know that there is the potential for great cuts in defense spending as a result of the sequester. I know you're on the state side, you're not a federal congressman, but are you concerned about this possibility? It could roll out over several months. I think your congressman is Paul Cook or others. Have you spoken with them about this issue?
Well, it's funny. I put to SJR 3 onto the floor yesterday, which asked the President and Congress to avert the sequestration and go back to the drawing table and understand that we are starting to wind down from wars, and that is typically when America cuts their defense quite a bit. I'm not talking about cutting the theater expense. I'm talking about cutting defense down too, and that's what we do in America, and I don't believe that's what we should do. So
there's no doubt, but you have two trends simultaneously hitting.
Absolutely.
We are leaving Afghanistan and we have the sequester going at the same time. That could really impact your district.
Well, and all of the companies have said the same thing. We are in a holding pattern right now because we don't know.
So what can be done? I mean, the fact that a Republican member in California said, please stop the sequester, that's powerful. That's powerful.
I think that is powerful. And my congressman is Buck McKeon.
Oh, Buck McKeon, okay.
Who is the chair of Armed Services. I also have Kevin McCarthy, who's third in the Republican Party. So I think that they're working as best as they can, and they're trying to push this.
Okay, we'll see what happens. His name is Steve Knight, member of the California State Senate. This is California.